Welcome to the Deep Dive, your shortcut to being genuinely well-informed. Today we're focusing on one of the biggest shifts happening in corporate culture. I mean, you can't go anywhere without hearing about diversity, equity, and inclusion, but we're going to go a layer deeper. This deep dive is for you, whether you're a leader, a manager, or just a colleague who gets that, moving beyond the basics means tapping into this incredibly valuable and often overlooked talent pool.
That's exactly right. Our mission today is to really examine how modern employee engagement is adapting to include neurodivergent professionals, specifically and thoughtfully. We're going to get into the practical, actionable steps companies are taking, and maybe most importantly, we'll lay out the business case. This isn't just about ethics, it's a real competitive advantage.
Right, because we all know the standard DEI toolbox is growing, but it feels like neurodivergence is often sort of left as an afterthought. And it's tricky because traditional workplaces, they were basically designed for the neurotypical majority.
They were, and that makes them non-inclusive, usually by accident. I mean, if you just look at traditional recruiting or even just a standard open plan office, they often have these hidden barriers.
Hidden barriers, like what?
Well, it could be an environment that's just too much sensory-wise. Or think about interviews. They rely so much on verbal cues, social performance. If we don't adapt to those systems, we end up limiting the engagement of this talent, and ultimately the company misses out on their skills.
Okay, so before we really get into the business side, let's make sure we're all on the same page. What do we actually mean when we say neurodiversity?
It's a great question because the term is everywhere now. Neurodiversity basically just refers to the natural, inherent variations in how human brains are wired, how they're structured, how they function. And this is not a small group of people. Estimates suggest it's somewhere between 10 and 20% of the population worldwide.
So 1 in 5 people, potentially.
Potentially, yeah. And the spectrum covers a lot of conditions. We're talking about things like ADHD, autism spectrum disorder, dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia, Tourette's syndrome. The core idea really is that these aren't deficits. They're just differences in cognitive style, different ways of thinking, learning, and seeing the world.
Okay, so let's unpack that. Why is focusing on neurodiversity not just an ethical imperative, which it absolutely is, but a real strategic advantage?
Yeah.
A business case with an ROI. When you're talking to execs, what are the 4 key benefits they're seeing?
The benefits are huge, and they're surprisingly measurable when you do it right. The first big one is enhancing innovation.
Okay.
Think about it. If you staff a team with people who all think the same way, who all process problems the same way, you get groupthink. Neurodivergent professionals, just by their nature, they often come at a problem from a completely different angle. It's an immediate invasion of cognitive diversity.
So it's almost like a structural defense against getting stuck in a rut intellectually. Different lenses mean you find more solutions.
Absolutely. And then that ties right into the second benefit, improving problem-solving abilities. Many neurodivergent individuals excel at intense focus, deep analysis, pattern recognition. They can see the finer details that others might miss.
We've definitely seen this in fields like cybersecurity or big data analysis, where spotting one tiny little anomaly can crack the whole case.
That's the perfect example. It's about finding that fraudulent pattern or that tiny bug in the code. These traits add so much value when you put people in the right roles. And then the third benefit is boosting workplace productivity.
How so?
Well, when people are in environments and roles that are actually tailored to their strengths, they don't just perform okay, they often hyper-focus and deliver superior results. Their specific strengths, whether it's technical skill or incredible information recall, translate into really high-quality work.
So that hits the bottom line directly. And the fourth one, that feels like it lifts up the whole company culture.
It does. It's supporting a diverse company culture. When you actively welcome neurodiversity and you show that you value these strengths, you create a more inclusive culture for everyone. It signals that the company values talent over just conforming, and that helps you attract and keep the best people, neurodivergent or neurotypical.
That's the perfect setup for the how. So let's dive into the 5 key strategies. The first step has to be fixing the front door, right? Updating how we recruit.
Yes. Strategy 1 is all about recruitment. The traditional interview is, well, it's basically a test of social performance under pressure, not actual job skill. And that can be disastrous for a brilliant candidate who happens to have a certain neurodivergent profile.
So what are the smart companies doing instead?
They're swapping out those performance-based interviews for skill-based ones. You see tech giants like EY, Dell really leading the way here. Dell has a program, Neurodiversity at Dell. They replace the traditional interview with project-based tasks.
What does that actually look like in practice? Is it like a take-home test?
It's a bit more than that. Instead of asking someone to describe how they'd fix a system, they give them a real controlled scenario and say, okay, fix the system. It lets the candidate show what they can do, their actual skills, without having to worry about managing eye contact or interpreting subtle social cues. It's all about the quality of the work.
That's so smart. It's focusing on what actually matters for the job. And I imagine it also requires offering a lot more flexibility during the process itself.
Exactly. You could call it strategy 1.5. Offering accommodations like, sending interview questions in advance, allowing more time for tasks, or being flexible with scheduling. It signals from day one that this is a place that adapts.
Okay, so that's getting them in the door. Strategy 2 then focuses on the place itself, tailoring workplaces to neurodivergent needs. The standard cubicle farm just isn't cutting it.
Not at all. The environment is so important because sensory input noise, light, even temperature can have a massive impact on cognitive function. The goal is to minimize things that cause overstimulation or even understimulation because both can really get in the way of work.
Can you give us a real-world example, how a company adapted a physical space?
Yeah, of course. Ubisoft is a great one. They realized that different people need different kinds of space, so they redesigned some offices to have these quiet zones, low stimulus, protected areas that are great for autistic staff who need to filter out distractions. But then on the flip side, they also created more dynamic, motion-friendly spaces for employees with ADHD, where being able to pace or move a bit actually helps them concentrate.
And it's not just the walls, right? The technology has to be inclusive too.
Oh, absolutely. Things like text-to-speech software or speech-to-text or even mind-mapping tools. Think about someone with severe dyslexia. If writing a report is a huge hurdle, but they can just dictate it and let the tech handle the transcription, suddenly you've unlocked all their intellectual capacity for the actual task.
You're basically offloading the cognitive processes that are difficult for them, so they can double down on what they're brilliant at.
That's a perfect way to put it. And even the small physical details matter. Things like adjustable lighting, standing desks, ergonomic chairs. Some companies are even using booking systems now, so you can reserve a desk based on the sensory environment you need for that specific day.
This is where it gets really interesting for me. Once someone is hired, and they're in a good environment, it's all about creating that sense of belonging. That brings us to strategy 3. Provide resources for psychological well-being.
Yes. The goal here is creating real psychological safety. It's critical whether your team is in the office, remote, or hybrid. People have to feel valued and, comfortable enough to say what they need without being afraid of judgment.
So what's the best way to build that safety structurally?
Employee resource groups, ERGs, and mentorship programs are probably the most effective tools. At Ubisoft, their neurodiversity ERG isn't just a support group. It's a peer network for sharing strategies, but it's also a feedback channel to management. It helps build real allyship and turns simple inclusion into a genuine sense of belonging.
That sense of community feels like a natural lead-in to strategy 4. Offer personalized training opportunities. This sounds like it has to be a two-way street, right? Training for managers, but also for neurodivergent staff.
It absolutely has to be. You can't just assume managers know how to do this. You need to invest in real, deep neuro-inclusion training for managers, for HR, for recruiters. It's about teaching them how to give clear feedback, how to avoid vague instructions, how to implement accommodations without a big fight.
That sounds like training on how to be a better manager for everyone.
It often is. It improves communication across the board. And then for the neurodivergent employees, development is just as key.
What kind of skills would you teach in, say, a self-advocacy training course?
That training is so important. It teaches people how to clearly and respectfully articulate what they need from their manager and their team. It might even involve scripting conversations about accommodations or setting professional boundaries. You're giving them the tools to navigate the corporate world successfully. And of course, the training delivery has to be customized. Maybe use more visual aids or hands-on learning instead of just a long verbal lecture.
Okay, so we've built this whole strategy. We're recruiting differently, building better environments, ensuring psychological safety, and providing specialized training. But how do we know if it's actually working? If it's paying off? Which brings us to strategy 5. Measure success and improve.
Right, this is the ongoing part. You can't just set it and forget it. You have to constantly assess how it's going. You track key metrics, things like staff turnover, promotion rates for neurodivergent employees, and of course, reported employee satisfaction.
And there's some pretty staggering data on why measuring engagement is not optional.
Oh, absolutely. The Gallup report on this is, well, it's eye-opening. Low engagement costs the global economy trillions of dollars. Trillions. But on the other side, engaged employees have a 66% increase in their overall well-being. So if your program is boosting engagement, you're directly cutting risk and boosting your human capital.
So to do that, managers need really specific feedback. How do you get that from this group of employees without making them feel singled out?
You build it into the tech you're already using. Performance tools, engagement surveys, internal comms. The key is to make it anonymous and specific. So instead of a generic, "Are you happy?" you ask targeted questions like, "Does your workspace support your ability to concentrate?" Or, "Are instructions from management clear and actionable?"
So the feedback is about the system and the environment, not about the person.
Exactly. And that data lets you keep refining things. You can also use awareness campaigns to make sure everyone, neurotypical and neurodivergent, knows what resources are available and how to use them.
That constant loop of feedback and refinement, that sounds like a truly mature strategy.
Yeah.
It's way beyond just checking a compliance box.
That's really the big takeaway. Creating these inclusive workplaces, yes, it meets ethical goals, but it's also a fundamental strategic advantage. It leads to new levels of creativity and productivity. When you adapt your systems, you stop seeing neurodiversity as a problem to be managed and start seeing it for what it is, a powerful, untapped resource.
And that leads us to our final thought for you to take away. While all these tools and strategies, the quiet zones, the project-based hiring are essential, the organizations that really truly get this right are the ones where the leaders set a visible example. They recognize and accommodate the varying needs of all their employees, not just the ones they're legally required to. So the question for you is, what's one small change, behavioral or structural, that you can make today in your corner of the world to start accommodating the unique minds around you and unlock the potential that's just waiting there?